Welcome back to Casa de Confidence. From time to time, I get to meet in real life people that I've been following online. And wow, this was like a starstruck moment for me at Podfest. I've been following her on TikTok forever and ever. A lot of the stuff that I've implemented in my business has been because of her. She is a wonderful teacher as well and has been forging the way not only for herself online, but for others. I want you to know this person more. And to, if you haven't heard about her, you must, and you need to go follow her right away. But let's learn a little bit more about Kenya Kelly. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to meet people on, the show that I have met in person, but also that I met online first. So
Yeah.
I know that you've been doing this for a while now. Could you have envisioned when you were 21 that you would have such a prominent presence online?
No, no. I will say I knew that I was going to do something of significance
Hmm.
because I don't know if you can see it, but behind me
Yeah.
there's a picture of me on stage in front of 12,000 people, and
Yeah.
I was 21 years old.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I always knew something was up, but I never would have
Hmm.
thought this.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that for so many of us, right, we have a picture, sort of murky, but a picture of what we want it to look like.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I have found is that the picture that actually takes kind of like the Polaroid, right? The one that comes into focus at times may not be necessarily what we envision it to be,
Hmm.
but at times it's even so much better than what we envisioned.
Yeah.
And it really is a matter of believing. Now, some individuals might have taken like a detour on their way to having that Polaroid be really into focus. Tell me a little bit about that journey. What was the journey from you at 21 to where you are now? And let's learn a little bit about you, what you've been doing.
Yeah, so it definitely was not a straight line. It definitely was not easy by no means. And so I like to always tell people that like what they see today is as a result of 20, 30 years of a thing. So I'm definitely
Mm,
not an overnight success by no means. But at 21, I was in college and I got recruited into a network marketing company, which I was really new to, but thank
mhm,
God I had a really good sponsor. And at that time, I was very, very rough around the edges, but they could see something that I had.
mm.
I think it's like Zig Ziglar calls it that something, and I didn't
That's
know that I
something.
had that something, but they knew there was something there. And I was forced to read a lot of books in network marketing in
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
company, and because I was becoming a leader really fast, but I was a bad one. And so it really started to shape how I thought, shape my expectations. It shaped how I saw the world because I saw the world as someone who grew up in a lot of poverty and
Mhm.
a terrible environment. And the network marketing industry and all those books started to retrain me on what life really could look like.
Mhm.
And so I did that for many years. And I wouldn't say I had a lot of confidence. I mean, I think I had a big personality, but I
Mhm.
had low self-esteem. And starting to be someone who was in front of the room teaching and commanding a room, it really started to help with my belief in myself and how I felt about myself.
Mhm.
But I made a lot of bad decisions and really didn't know what I was doing. So I ended up years later having to get a job. And that kind of messed with my
Okay.
confidence because I had seen all the highs of the highs and I was
Mhm.
experiencing the lows of the lows. But going back into corporate America was easy because one, it was a steady paycheck,
Yep.
right? But also I had these skills and this knowledge and experience from network marketing to really help me. And it started like getting back into corporate America, got me back on the right track. And it also
Mm.
started me back into entrepreneurship.
Amazing. Well, one of the things that I found that is a little bit of a similarity between you and I is that you were stressed out, you were underpaid at one point in your life, and now you have a profitable and thriving business.
Hmm.
Yet, there's so many different things that you had to learn. And I love that you share about the books and being in the network marketing company.
Hmm.
I did network marketing as well, and I know that people beat up on it, but they do teach you some leadership skills that you can
Hmm.
take on, and then you can really build from. But I
Yeah.
believe that there was one ingredient for you and for many people who find success, and that is determination. Do you think that that's
Mhm.
something that you built or something that you had?
I think it was a combination of things.
Mhm.
Like I'm very spiritual, like a Jesus girl. And
Me
when I
too.
look at myself today, I'm like, my dad always had an entrepreneurial spirit, even though he wasn't in the family,
Mhm,
it was there. So I'm like, part of that was already in my DNA.
mhm,
Then it was being in a very chaotic environment, but being kind of shielded and protected by my older sisters,
mhm,
and then seeing my friends in high school, like how their parents were raising them, something in me was just kind of like, ooh, I like that life. Maybe I can
mhm,
go after what they've got going on.
mhm,
And then I also think it was just God's, like he always had this plan, and
mhm,
I kept taking the right road, like just go this road. Okay, now go this way. And I didn't know that I was going on his road, but I was taking these little steps, and it was constantly guiding me to where I was going. So I think it was, some of it was there. A lot of it was environmental books and people that were placed in my
mhm,
life to help me, and then a choice. But now, like once I was like 24, 25, it became, oh, I'm going after whatever it is I can have. Then it
mhm.
became me going after it.
Yeah. So, so good. And I think that, one of the things, excuse me, is that we don't really understand when we are in the middle of it. And it's not until we can look back and kind of say, like, oh, I get it. I get it. How I kind of weave that together. Now, one of the things that I really feel compelled to talk to you about is many of my clients and women who listen to the show, when they're talking about confidence, right? They only want to talk about all the highlights. And I think that social media puts out there the need for us to highlight how great we are, highlight, look at me, what I've accomplished, because I think in some ways we're trying to keep up, right? But
Mhm.
you also had some very significant lows. You had significant lows where you lost your apartment, your car, and you had to kind of, in some ways, what some people, and I don't consider it this way, but some people may consider this kind of like backpedaling. Tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about how that hit your confidence and what was some of the stuff that you went through to kind of rebuild your spirit because again you talk about how it kind of forced you to really you know look at and feel that you've lost some sort of dignity, although I don't see it that way, but I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. So that was kind of like when I was in my younger age. So
Hmm.
I was in network marketing, and I was making a lot of money, but I didn't really know a lot about money. I didn't understand taxes, and
Mm.
I was just spending as if it was going to constantly keep coming, because in the network marketing company, we got paid every day. There was constant deposits
Wow.
every single day, yeah.
Okay.
So because of that, I kept living day to day to day to day, and I
Mm.
wasn't being a good steward of my money. I didn't know at the time, but I wasn't. And so I
Hmm.
wasn't, I lived in like a rent controlled apartment too. And so the rent was so low for whatever reason, I wasn't paying it. And I just wasn't paying on all the things I needed to
Hmm.
pay for. And I started because I was spending more than what I was making, I ended up like, oh, now I'm really in a hard time. Like now I can't even afford to pay for the things that I need to pay for. And of course, I lost my car, and then I lost my apartment, so on and so on. And
Hmm.
that was, I won't say devastating because I was so young then,
Hmm.
but it was like a rude awakening. But granted, I grew up in an environment where you lost your car, you lost your apartment. It was like we were constantly doing that. So I was in
Yeah.
this cycle of how I
Hmm.
grew up. And it was really ego, like, got to my ego. And it was in that season where it was really hard. I was embarrassed because I had this big
Hmm.
team. Everybody knew me in that company as this person. And I just went
Mm.
dark. And not in a, well, I went dark in terms of people knew that I stopped, but a lot of people didn't know why. And I
Hmm.
was just like, I've got to figure life out. I've got to rebuild. And it
Yeah.
was really hard, really messed with my ego. But at the same time, because I had read so many, like I'm not like the average person. And so I say that because I had read hundreds of books, I had listened to hundreds of hours of CDs. So the me that had never done that would have just been out,
Right.
right? But because all that was there, I knew that, okay, I'm gonna get a job and then I'm just gonna take it one step at a time. But it was emotional. It was hard, but I would knew that like, okay, let's just course correct, you know?
Yeah, I thank you for touching on this because I think that, and there's something that you just said that you lost your car, you lost, other material things,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the life that you were in.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with a single mom too. I grew up, well, not two, but with a single mom, and we didn't have a car for a very long time, and we had to take
Mm-hmm.
the bus, all of us, and at times, we couldn't pay the bills when it came to the lights, or we would come home from school. It's like, oh, the lights are off, or the water is off, and little things like that, and it would became such a norm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Definitely, I talk about it now because I know that I became the person who I am through some of the challenges and difficulties and lessons that I went through. But I know that it's taken me a while to really be able to, when I was in corporate America, God forbid, I wouldn't really talk about that, right? Because I had to keep up this little persona,
Yeah.
and I didn't want people to find out I was poor at one point, or that I didn't have the whatever. Um, a lot of women struggle with that shame, struggle with, I don't want people to see that part of me, or the things that the world may see as a negative. And I think that I don't see it as a negative because it helped me form me, and it formed you, and it formed so many
Yeah.
people. How do you get the courage to talk about the difficulties or the things that, were, again, the world defines as, bad or whatever you want to call it. But how do you get the courage? Because you talk about it, you share it, and it's not unique to you. And I think that many women, right, struggle with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that people struggle with it because it's not pretty. You know, it doesn't make you look good or feel good. And then people see you a certain type of way when they know those types of things. So I can understand why someone wouldn't want to tell anybody anything. I think that because I've been programmed, right?
Mhm,
So in network marketing, you're programmed to have success, but you're programmed to help people identify with who you were to who you are. So in that when you are doing presentations in network marketing, you're telling people I have this life, but I was just like you. So like at
mhm,
21 years old, I was programmed on how to tell my story, right?
mhm,
So I think that the shame and all that just kind of like shattered so at an early age that I never grew up in that environment where it was like, hey, you don't share that as much, you know.
mhm,
Now I remember when I was younger that I would never tell anything like that because it brings you shame and embarrassment,
mhm,
and when you're in school, people make fun of you and all that type of stuff. So I would never do that. But then network marketing, we were reading all these books where all people were doing was sharing their story. And they just kept
mhm,
sharing their story in all the books and then in the environment to where, today I share my story freely. Now,
mhm,
if someone was a client of mine and they're starting out like as a woman, and I'm like, okay, well, I can identify the fact that you don't want to tell somebody you went through divorce or that
mhm.
you dealt with this and this.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always tell people is that you don't necessarily start by telling them what you're going through today, right? You are going
Mhm,
to tell them whatever you want to tell them about the past, and
mhm,
then whatever you want to reveal to them about what is happening with the present and the future. But you have to decide what feels comfortable to you first, because
mhm,
even though you can help people with all parts of your story, it doesn't mean that you should, and it doesn't mean that you want to, right? And so I would tell someone decide like what do you feel comfortable sharing with people, and based upon what it is that you are doing, like who are you going to serve with that information. If you just want to say something just to say it,
mhm,
then you got to determine if that's what you should say, but you've got to figure out like, what part of my journey is what I want to share, who do I want to impact with that, and why am I sharing that? So like the me today likes to share all this because while people know me because I'm a social media person, I'm more than that. That's just my job. I desire to inspire people to be the best version of themselves, to go to therapy, to seek the Lord, have balance in their houses. And the only way I can inspire people in all of that is allowing them to see me. And so because that's my intent, I choose how much I'm going to share with people.
A lot of people are uncomfortable sharing a lot.
Mhm.
Is it possible to share without sharing?
Yes, and it depends upon what the intention is.
Hmm.
Like if someone has a podcast and let's just say like they want to inspire women to be more confident. Well, you've got to understand that like there's only so much depth that you're going to go
Hmm.
with a person depending upon what you're willing to share with them. It's like friendship. I'm meeting a lot of people and I'm sharing certain things with people. And then as the relationships deepen, then I may go deeper on a topic. So like, for example, some people know I had a big surgery in
Hmm.
2023. So some people know that. Some people don't even know I had surgery. So then there's that. But then others know that I had the depth of the surgery, right? And
Hmm.
then a few know how this surgery has truly impacted me then,
Mm.
today, and in the future. So it's like I'm deciding what I'm going to share or
Hmm.
what have you. But it depends upon what a person is trying to do with the information and with the people that they're trying to impact.
Yeah, I'm so glad you talk about that because I think that, so many individuals, especially as they're entering an online presence, right? That's the first thing in the objection that I hear. I don't
Mm,
want to share. I don't want to be on social media. And I think that we really can curate the experience and still create that connection with people.
mm,
And but you get to decide what that looks like. And I think that you're very clear on that in what you're teaching. And again, like I said, I found you on TikTok and I binged your stuff and you've had challenges. I've joined the challenges and I want to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but I think that the one thing that I have noticed from you is that you are trustworthy because I you share, but at the
thank you.
same time you're sharing what you decide you're going to share and at what
Oh,
level.
yeah. For
Yeah.
sure. I mean, it even reminds me of like Kim Kardashian. We
Mhm.
think that Kim shares everything, but she does not.
No.
You would never knew what the inside of her house looks like until she got her daughter North, who likes to show off the house. And she's like, please stop sharing. And she's been on so many podcasts and she refuses to say anything bad about her ex-husband. She
Right.
refuses. And she's like, and then people are like, why won't you share? And she goes, I don't want to do that. And two, I've got kids. The last thing I need
Yeah.
is for my kids to be able to go back and see what mommy is saying about daddy. She's like, daddy can do whatever he's going to
So
do. But she said,
good.
but I am choosing not to do that. And so she is choosing what
Mhm.
she wants to share. Even though they think she shares everything, she does not.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that we tend to think that all these people are so public because we see a
Mhm.
lot of them, but we're seeing a lot of them without being seeing all of their private moments.
For sure.
And
We're seeing what they want us to see, which is the right thing.
uh-huh. How did you begin? Well, I know you got your start on Periscope. Tell me about Periscope for the people who don't know what it is.
Yeah, so Periscope is or was a live streaming app. So it was
Mhm.
owned by Twitter. And back in 2016, I started seeing people on this app just like
Mhm.
talking and teaching and selling stuff. And I was like, again, I had my entrepreneur background from the years.
Mhm.
And I was like, I don't really know what's happening here, but I'm just going to create an account. I'm going to watch videos and I'm going to
Mhm.
start just kind of sharing. And the more that I was sharing, the more I kept saying to myself, I think that there's some type of opportunity to make money,
Mhm.
but I don't know what that looks like. So I just kept watching people that were making money. Eventually, I invested in an hour call with somebody,
Mhm.
and that was the person who said, "Hey, you actually have something, and if you would stop watching everybody else and start to create, you'll
Mm.
be able to create something."
Yeah, so such a good advice. I have a good friend, and She's been on the show, Corinne Crabtree, and she built a
Oh, nice.
huge. And again, I met Corinne in 2009 when it was only
Mhm.
15 of us in her little membership, and now
Yeah.
she's got 12,000 people. But she decided to go big on Periscope, and it
Mhm.
was about her showing up. And she, a lot of people were doing different things, but she's like,
Yeah.
no, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to share. And
Mhm.
she grew a platform. But I love that you're talking also about how somebody else does it doesn't need to be how you do it, but you need to do it. You need to
Mhm.
not just say, let me just copy it and watch and try to learn. I did that. And that was my mistake with YouTube. I launched the podcast in 2025 and 2020. We've been 5 years in,
Mhm.
and the podcast has been great. We've grown. But when it came to YouTube, I knew that I wanted to get in there, but I spent a lot of time just watching people, just watching people. And then
Yep.
last year I said, okay, I'm going to start. And then I started and I'm like, oh, I'm not doing it like that. And I kept thinking, why am I not doing it? And I
Yeah.
realized that it wasn't because I wasn't doing it. It's just that I was just trying to be somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can't find your groove, you can't find your brand, you can't find your message until you really start to share it and share it imperfectly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like with whatever that you're doing, whether it's
Hmm.
Periscope or it's YouTube or it's a podcast, it's like you can't figure out what your groove is, who your people are, and where you're going with it until you just get started. Many people just have this desire, this dream, and say, "Oh, one day
Hmm.
I'm going to do this thing," or then they try to make everything perfect or wait for perfect scenarios. But everybody that we know today that has whatever level of success that we deem as success
Hmm.
all started at the same place, which is with nothing, with no
Hmm.
audience, with no real direction. They just decided to kind of try.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Who have you followed, and who are the people that kind of help to form you and support you and inspire you online?
Yeah. So, well, first person that inspired me definitely was my mentor in network marketing. And then I've always, always, always looked up to Oprah Winfrey.
Hmm.
Of course, like as a black woman, you're like, when you see this black lady on TV, you're just like, how is that happening?
Yeah,
And
right.
then brown skin, heavy set black lady.
Hmm.
So she's always been somebody,
Girl, you and I both.
yeah, you've
Right.
got this story of like, you know where this person comes from. Like, and you're just like, look at where this person has come from. Like, what
Hmm.
in the absolute world? And then online today, who would I say inspires me online today? Oh man. So I was very inspired by Shalene Johnson.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
learned about her through Periscope,
Yeah.
and I was inspired more so by seeing her big personality. And
Hmm.
like once I became friends with her, once I started seeing like this person came from nothing. It's not like she
Yeah.
was just all of a sudden this Shalene Johnson lady.
Hmm.
She came from nothing, and her husband came from nothing,
Yeah.
and they almost lost everything. And you start to see the
Hmm.
resilience in
Yeah.
people, and you're like, and you see the person today, and you're like, whoa. But
Hmm.
that is only because there were some decisions that she
Yeah.
and he made back then,
Hmm.
and it's just been like you just watch what people can do when when they just make a decision.
Hmm.
And so who inspires me online right now? Um, I wouldn't say I have anybody specific that's inspiring me. I think because I constantly go back to my same
Hmm.
Oprah and all
Yeah.
them that kind of inspire me. And I'm kind of like in this season of my life, I am not looking for other people to inspire me. I'm inspiring myself, which
Uh,
is kind of weird to say, but
nope,
like
not at all. I get it.
asking me that question, I'm like going through my Rolodex of people online, and I'm like, oh, I'm not really inspired by
Hmm.
anybody right now. I'm inspiring myself, and I'm like patting myself on the back because of all the crazy things that I have been through,
Hmm.
and then all the things that I have accomplished, and not just financially, but just like emotionally overcome. I'm like, I feel like I'm inspiring myself. Yeah.
The point in when we really look within ourselves, right? And dig deep for it. And yeah, we can spend a lot of time trying to get inspired, but I think that a lot of times we it's easy for us to fall into the trap of the comparison game, right? Like,
Hmm.
oh, look what they have and I could never do that. And then But of
Yeah.
course, we're never going to measure up to somebody else. And it's not until we can take it, some great things from them, but we have to actually practice those lessons and
Yeah.
know how they work from us. Funny thing last night, my husband and I were watching The Floor. I don't know if you've seen I don't know, it's got Rob Lowe and it's a game show and I don't really love it, but my mom and my husband really love it. And
Hmm.
uh, it's a quiz game, right? And a lot of the answers yesterday, I kept calling out Oprah, Oprah, and my husband's like, "Are you obsessed?" I'm like, first of all, listen to me. Every single answer could be Oprah
Oh,
for
yeah,
this, and I
for
think that
sure.
we become so enamored with individuals, but at the same time, we have to have that enamoredness for somebody else be for us.
Hmm.
And then that's when we begin to see a lot of traction. Your presence online again is I found you on TikTok. I follow you on all the other platforms as well. But how did you transition from Periscope to TikTok?
Yeah. So I used Periscope and Facebook Live to build this brand design agency that was my bread and butter. And when we knew something was happening at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, we didn't know what was happening in the
Hmm.
world. And because of that, I was like, I didn't know what was going to happen, if I was going to lose my income, lose my house, or whatever, because you just don't know
Mm.
what's going to happen. And I was just praying, asking God for wisdom and a creative strategy. And I heard him tell me to get onto TikTok. And nobody was talking about TikTok at the
Hmm.
time. I thought it was probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life to hear. Um, and so I resisted for maybe a couple of weeks or so. And then eventually I downloaded it and I was trying to figure out like what's going on here.
Hmm.
And eventually I had a viral video. And I was just like, oh, and it wasn't business related. It was just me being goofy. And it
Hmm.
started to kind of click, something is happening. And I just kept
Right.
having dreams at night. I could like hear God telling me TikTok. And I was like, what is happening? And so I decided that I could be crazy or I could be hearing. So let me just err on the
Hmm.
side of I'm hearing right. And I just decided to double down on the platform all of 2020 and then everything exploded.
Hmm.
And at that point, I was like, do I want to keep focusing on designing people's brands or do I want to go all in on video?
Hmm.
And it was hard. It was a hard decision to make because I didn't want to lose everything trying to focus on that. But it was definitely the best decision I made at the end of 2020 to put down the agency and focus on TikTok marketing, and everything exploded.
I hear a lot from individuals, and I also hear it from people who are not necessarily in the same space, online space that we straddle, you and I and
Hmm.
other listeners. But I often hear, "Oh, that's the dance. Why are you there? That's for kids." And it's hard to explain to them, right? How it definitely is a place for you to not only get the visibility, but really start to forge a deeper relationship with
Hmm.
individuals. What's the secret to forging? Because I know that going viral is great. I mean, I had a viral video. I mean, not to the extent a lot of people do. I mean, I had 500,000 views, but and it grew my account. But
Yeah.
that video had nothing to do with what I do.
Hmm.
And a lot of people that followed me were not necessarily my ideal clients. So how can we, right, create that right rhythm?
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the first things I always tell people who are considering TikTok is that you have to abandon what you think you know about the
Hmm.
platform. Most people know the viral video somebody sent them or the viral videos they've seen on their For You page because they're
Hmm.
not looking at it from the lens of like a business owner or something like that. So, you got to kind of come to the platform with like an open eyes about
Hmm.
what is potentially happening here. And then I tell my clients to do a quick search, one or two words in their industry,
Hmm.
and then they start binge watching that content versus what's happening on the FYP so they
Yeah.
can really get a sense. But then once you actually start to create, what has to happen is that you have to look at TikTok as first of all, it's a global platform. So you're going to reach people
Hmm.
all over the world, but
Right.
mainly in the United States if you're in the US.
Hmm.
And every time you create a video, you're potentially forming a connection. Every time you create a video, you are you could potentially go viral. You just never know. And
Hmm.
when you are thinking about the content that you are creating, you have to think about the fact that one, this could be the one that's going to make me go viral. Two, who am I trying to target? And then
Hmm.
once you've got the content there, now you've got to actually engage with people. Okay.
Hmm.
So you can't just post something and just get out of there or just try to go viral and make a bunch of money, but you have to actually spend time cultivating the relationships, and the cultivation happens in the comments, but for me it happened a lot on live stream.
Hmm.
So I started on TikTok in 19, and then once I got the live feature, which was after 1,000 followers, I
Hmm.
started going live every day, and I started building
Hmm.
these relationships with people. They knew me, they liked me, they trusted me.
Hmm.
And so I became their TikTok guru because I was
Hmm.
creating videos, and I chose that
Yeah.
as my platform to create. Then what I ended up doing was I started going live on TikTok and all the platforms at one time, which allowed me to just do one thing that would serve
Hmm.
everybody. But I kept building my authority on that platform by my consistency with live
Hmm.
stream, and then me and actually engaging with them and being their go-to expert. So,
Hmm.
like for example, I just created a video, I guess last week, about President Trump extending the
The
deadline or
TikTok.
whatever.
Yep.
And a lot of the comments were like, "Yeah, you're my guru. I knew you were going to have the goods." And the only reason they feel that way is because I'm
Hmm.
constantly being the one that delivers the
Yep.
information and the one that helps them to grow an account.
Absolutely. When we were in Podfest, right? I asked you. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Because I knew you would be the person, and you said
Yeah,
that's not going away. And I thought, are you sure? Are you sure? And here we are, right?
here we are. Yeah,
And you are
exactly.
that valued, trusted source
Thank
for
you.
me, and I think that that's exactly what we should strive for. Now, you said also something that is very important, and this is what I love about the content that you're putting out there. And this definitely is a game changer. You're serving. You're not getting into live thinking, "Oh my God, okay, how many people are going to sign up? How many people are?"
Hmm.
You're giving value. You're serving. You're sharing your information, and that's how you're building that relationship with individuals,
Hmm.
and you're nurturing the relationship. And I think that that's the one thing that makes a big difference because,
Hmm.
you know, the world is full of choices, and when someone can choose to watch you over somebody else, it's because they're going to feel connected and they're going to say, okay, she's the person that helps. She's the person that gives me the information I need. Oh, when I need help, who am I going to go to?
Right.
That person.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what people are looking for. It's like when you go to the doctor,
Hmm.
initially you're just going to the doctor because that's who you're assigned to by your insurance.
Hmm.
But once you find that one doctor that you're like, oh, I can trust them, I can share all this stuff with them, then they become your go-to person. Like I have
Hmm.
a doctor in San Diego where when I moved from, and I kept going back to her saying, like, listen, I'm seeing these doctors in
Hmm.
Texas. How can I pay you? Because like I trust you, I trust your
Hmm.
expertise. And we had to figure out a way for me to
Yeah.
be able to consult with her periodically because I'm
Hmm.
like, I know how I am when I am with you. But the only
Hmm.
reason why that happened is because I had to invest in her, but she had to serve when I was
Hmm.
investing,
Yeah.
and I had to get results.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I moved to Connecticut um 13 years ago, and I have to say for a good 7 years I was still going to New York City to get my hair cut
Exactly. Yep.
because I had a relationship and I trusted
Yeah,
them, and I could just walk in and I could say same thing, or I could say I need something different, and they
exactly.
knew me enough and they
Yep.
took care of me. And
Hmm.
that's exactly, I think, the attitude, right? Or what we need to strive for when we're online.
Hmm.
Now, of course, there's so many different platforms online, my friend.
Hmm.
And I'd love for you to kind of, I mean, it's comparing apples and oranges as far as I'm concerned, or maybe I'm wrong, right? But people tend to also be on Instagram. People are on, whatever new du jour platform. Maybe they're going to Threads. Maybe
Hmm.
they're in Lemonade now, which, we can get and talk about that another day. But what are the similarities, for instance, with Reels and TikTok? And can we just repurpose our content from one platform to the next? Does that work?
Yeah. So to answer that question first, like you can take all the same content and post it on all the platforms,
Hmm.
right? One of the things that I have my audience do is we film in our phones. We don't film on the platforms.
Yep.
We edit in CapCut and then we distribute. So that way we're
Hmm.
just filming content once. We're just editing once,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
then you can place it everywhere else. You don't want to put it. You don't want to film it in TikTok. You don't want to film it in Instagram because once you film it in those platforms, there's data on the video, even when you can't see the watermark.
Hmm.
And when
Hmm.
you try to repurpose that, those other platforms know where that video comes from and they don't perform as well. Okay.
Oh, so good. That's good advice. I have to tell you, I did learn that to do the video on my phone and
Hmm.
then post it. And I tend to do that. And I have noticed, actually, you just said that. I had a video that I did last week.
Hmm.
I did it on stories. I saved the video, didn't
Hmm.
post it in stories. I saved it
Yeah.
and then I put it on TikTok and it has barely any views.
Hmm.
Barely.
Because
Oh,
TikTok
so
knows where it came from.
fascinating. That's excellent advice. Now, is the algorithm different?
Well, the platforms are different, period. So
Hmm.
TikTok is a standalone algorithmic beast,
Hmm.
when it comes to knowing you, knowing what you're interested in, knowing what you could potentially be interested in based upon your behaviors. Instagram is a very robust platform. So there's Instagram,
Hmm.
there's stories, there's highlights, there's so many
Hmm.
different things, and then there's reels. And so Instagram is trying to compete with TikTok, and they're doing a good job in terms of people's attention who already like Instagram, right?
Right.
But the algorithms are very different. So Instagram they are definitely learning you and what to serve you for
Hmm.
sure, but they're also just sending you content in general because they don't know you as
Yeah.
well as the TikTok algorithm, right?
Hmm.
And that's the same thing that goes for YouTube Shorts and Facebook Reels. Like they both are their algorithms are learning, but which one has the better one that's more sensitive to really knowing what to give you? It's TikTok. And
Hmm.
that's because TikTok is focused on one thing,
Yeah.
and that's the For You feed. Whereas
Hmm.
Facebook is focused on so many things, and
Yeah.
Instagram is focused on so many things, and so is YouTube. So I
Hmm.
think this is probably why Instagram is considering making Reels its own standalone platform in an effort to try to
Mm.
compete with TikTok because
Yeah.
Reels and Instagram and all the different, it's just too much going on with that platform.
Hmm.
But
You
all of
heard it
them
here,
are,
people.
what'd you say?
You heard it here first.
Yeah, but all of them are amazing. So we make money on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on all of them. Which one has made me grow the fastest as a personality? Definitely TikTok for sure.
Hmm.
But which one is making me the most money right now? It's Facebook and Instagram, and that's because the buying behavior on TikTok is increasing. But so I always tell people that like where TikTok is reminds me a little bit of where Facebook started. So when Facebook started,
Hmm.
we were all like, I don't know if I want to be
Yeah.
there. I don't know if I want to post anything there.
Hmm.
And then when we saw all the ads, we were like, I don't know if I want to buy anything here. And then we
Hmm.
started to buy. And so now where TikTok is people are like, they're buying now, but they're not
Hmm.
buying at the rate where they're buying on Instagram and Facebook because it's still new behavior that is happening on
Right.
TikTok. Like TikTok Shop is doing great, but the behavior is very like at 100 when you come to Instagram and Facebook. And I think with TikTok, it's at like 65, 70% in terms of
Hmm.
people trusting that this is where I spend my money on this platform with ads and all that type of stuff. But it's going to get there for sure at some point.
Yeah. I think that, the trust value for the platforms is definitely something that
Mhm.
we need to get to. I remember friends that said would never be on Facebook and here they are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the same thing is happening with TikTok.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes I hear from my clients, my account is not growing.
Hmm.
I'm posting every day. I'm doing it. What is the one thing that maybe someone that is posting consistently, let's say on Instagram, and I know that you covered a little bit of this in social media marketing world, but what can people do to kind of regain the growth in their accounts when they're stuck?
Yeah. So the number one reason why your account is not growing is because people don't find your content to be a place where they want to experience
Hmm.
every day. right?
Mm, yep.
Because the reason why someone follows your account is because they saw something, they've gone to your account and they see more and they say, "Oh, I want to see more from this person on a regular
Hmm.
basis."
Yep.
So if people are not following you, it's because you're delivering content and they might engage with it, but it doesn't mean they want to see you all the
Hmm.
time, right? That's like even our own behaviors. When I choose to follow an account, it's because I'm like, oh, I'm getting value from this
Hmm.
account. So I recently followed like 5 different people who teach CapCut tutorials. Why did I
Mm,
follow them? Because I'm in a season where I'm really trying to learn how to do
yeah.
better edits on my video.
Hmm.
And when I looked at their content on their account, I'm like, oh, they do, this is really what they do, and their videos are great.
Hmm.
So if a person is consistently posting and nobody's following, it is something that's happening with the actual the your regular content.
Hmm.
But also it's a lot of times right now it's because people aren't actually posting good videos. I know it sounds mean to say
Nope.
it, but what we think is a good video and what the viewer thinks are good videos are definitely two
Oh,
totally different
100%.
things.
Yeah.
So you've got 2 seconds to get somebody's attention. You may think your video was good, but if they're not staying beyond 2 seconds, then it doesn't matter. They didn't even see the rest, right?
Yep.
So it's learning the art of creating content, like content that is attention grabbing enough to your
Hmm.
audience to get them to stop and watch the video,
Yeah.
and to get them to watch the rest of the video, because if they're not
Yeah.
stopping and watching, then it doesn't matter what happened in the rest of the video.
Yeah. I learned from you the importance of a hook.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
that, you sometimes start the video and you don't realize that you only have a very few seconds to let someone know, like, okay, I want to watch this and stop.
Yeah,
And it's so easy to
exactly.
keep scrolling. So, and I know that you have hooks that go viral, and that's one of the things that people can download. And we're going to have that in the show notes. But I certainly would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your book.
Oh,
Tell me a little bit about your book and what prompted you to write it.
yeah. So my book is called Before You Quit Your Job, A Strategic Guide for Entrepreneurs. So I wrote this in 2020 or
Hmm.
2020, 2019, 2019, I think it's 2019. And I had wanted to write that book for many years. I had
Hmm.
started it years prior when I was in network marketing. And I wanted to write it because when I was in the industry, people were encouraged to quit their jobs, and they quit their jobs too soon.
Mm.
And you were sold the dream that if you quit your job, you're going to be able to go full time with this business and you can
Yeah.
make more money. And then when I got into the coaching and consulting industry, I watched more people encourage people to
Hmm.
quit their jobs, and they quit their
Mm.
jobs too soon. And I started to realize that we all went to school to learn how to have a job,
Hmm. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That, from grade school, middle school, high school, everything, how to have a job. We did not learn how to run a business. And so when you are encouraging people to quit their jobs, you're basically bringing them back to fifth grade,
Yeah.
because they don't know how to run a business. They don't know how to do
Hmm.
any of those things. They know how to operate one thing,
Yep.
which is the job. And so I
Hmm.
wrote the book because I was so frustrated with people encouraging folks to quit their jobs and watching people just
Yeah.
quit their jobs and putting themselves in bad financial situations
Hmm.
because they didn't know any better.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that I see that with entrepreneurs, they
Mhm.
take the leap before they're ready. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
different things. And I had a side hustle for a long time.
Hmm.
And people don't realize, people think like, oh, you quit your job and look at what happened. Well, I was laid off, but I had been running a side hustle. I'd been doing stuff on the side, and
Yeah.
and I knew that I needed to run my business like a business. I couldn't
Hmm.
just, this was not a hobby for me.
Hmm.
But yeah, people do encourage others to take that leap before they need to. So that's
Hmm.
definitely really, really great advice. Now,
Yeah.
do we need to pick one platform to go in all in on?
I think that if a person is getting started on social media, yes.
Hmm.
Because if you're not consistent on one, you're not going to be consistent on two and three. Okay. And all the platforms are different. So
Hmm.
Instagram is different
Yep.
from TikTok, different from YouTube, different from LinkedIn. And
Hmm.
so if a person is just getting started, you've got to learn what you can do and and what is
Right.
happening on that platform. And then you can add another. That's like we are just now adding LinkedIn because one,
Hmm.
our audience is there, but two,
Yeah.
we just haven't had the bandwidth to
Hmm.
do things on LinkedIn. But we haven't added threads to our strategy, or Blue
Hmm.
Sky or
Yep.
X or Pinterest. all great platforms, but we don't
Yeah.
have the space to be able to not just repurpose the content, but really understand what we need to be doing there.
Hmm. Absolutely. I remember when I had a Facebook account, I had a LinkedIn account when I was in my corporate job, and of course I had an Instagram, and I knew that I needed to go all in on one. And I
Hmm.
said, I'm going to learn Instagram. I'm going to learn it and learn it enough that, yes, can I post on others? Sure, but this
Yeah,
is it. And I didn't start really using the others for my business until I felt that I had a good handle on the one.
right.
And even when I went into TikTok, it was mainly, for fun
Yeah,
and to watch, to be entertained. And finally, I took the leap, but took the leap when I felt that I could begin to learn it, and I had
exactly.
the bandwidth because things were automated.
Hmm.
You're incredibly gracious with your time. I could keep you all day, and I won't. But what is the best way for individuals to connect with you, to work with you, to soak up your goodness, your knowledge and information?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm definitely teaching a lot on
Mhm.
Instagram, TikTok, and then on my YouTube channel, and everything is under my name, Kenya Kelly. But if someone wants to work with me, they literally can go to my website and just send me a message, or
Mhm.
they can DM me on Instagram, and then we can talk from there.
Okay, so you check your own messages on IG?
Yes.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
good. Me too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
I
not
love
that big.
hearing
I may
that.
seem big, but I'm not that big yet.
Listen, I know that no matter how big you get, I know that you have a very personal touch. I've heard you
Oh, thank
speak. I
you.
see you, the way that you relate to people. And again, I am just tickled red that you're here. And it's been amazing to, from someone that has learned so much from you. Thank you. And I am grateful for the time.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it so
yeah,
much.
absolutely. And I am going to put all the information in the show notes. And if there's anything that the listeners want to reach out, they will let you know that they found you through Casa de Confidence. And
Yeah.
again, grateful, and make sure that you follow her. And it's not just about the follow, comment, but
Right.
watch with an eye of a learner and pay attention, because then you can make that your own. And I know that if you want to go ahead and enroll in any of the courses or the classes or coaching that Kenya has, you're making the right decision, because she
Yeah.
definitely knows her stuff and she is a giver. So thank you
I
so much for
try.
being here, my friend. And thank you
Yeah.
for sharing your journey to confidence.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah. Until next time, my friends, go confidently in the direction of your dreams.